Today we're going to wrap up in an interesting way a topic that's been one of my favorite, which is the upside down. It's a concept talking about that Jesus came to illustrate and invite us to live life in the upside down, not in Western culture. And the tug is that our self and Western culture constantly pulls us of living in the upside down to what seems to be the right side up. Jesus comes along and says, listen, a follower of mine is to serve and not to be served. Jesus said, I came to serve and not be served. He illustrated the very thing he's asked us to do. And so if you just run with that concept, to serve other people is to put yourself underneath them. And that creates a tension immediately. Is that in every area of my life? Does that come down to my money and food and all those things? The answer is yes. And that's the tension that Jesus is trying to speak to all of us and ask us to take a step forward. There's a couple things we always say here. So as a first-time guest, we'll bring you up to speed. Pay attention to the tension, because that's where Jesus is typically speaking. If there's tension in your life somewhere, in resources, in raising kids, in your marriage, something at work, it's not their deal to work on it. You notice the tension, it's yours. Jesus is saying, hey, I'm going to reveal to you the tension. Now, pay attention to it, and you need to either step into the mess and help fix it, or you need to do something. So pay attention to the tension. And then the other thing is that, what is Jesus saying to you today, and what are you going to do about it? What is Jesus saying to you today, and what are you going to do about it? It's not just come here and hear something, wow, that was a lot of fun. I've never had that much fun in church. Wow, that is an interesting church. I've never seen church done like that before. That's not what it's about today. Today is about hearing from Jesus. That may be the catalyst to our week, that Jesus would send us on a trajectory this week that would impact our lives. And then the crazy thing is it ultimately impacts other people's lives. That's what I love about me listening to Jesus and allowing him to speak into my life, is that as I pay attention to the tension and make the adjustments in my life, I ultimately impact other people's lives for the better. I've learned that a relationship with Jesus makes me better at life and makes my life better. A relationship with Jesus makes your life better. It makes you better at life. And why do I say it like that? Is because as I learn how to be more like Jesus, I begin to love like Jesus, which makes me love other people more, which makes my life better, because there's less people that want to poke me in the eye because they're like, that guy's just a super nice guy. Can you? Now, I don't always get that. Sometimes they're like, I wish that guy was a nice guy. And then I tell them I'm a pastor, and they're like, yeah, you're the problem with all the... And I'm like, I'm just a messy guy. I really am. And we say that here. We're just a messy bunch of people following Jesus. So I invite you in today to hear the bookend of living in the upside down is to live with grace. Today, plenty of moments that we gave you grace and then we asked you for grace. And you're going to have to ask yourself, did we plan the moment where the mic didn't work, or was that just an accident? We're leveraging it. We'll never tell. But we required your grace at that moment to go, oh, yeah, you're a set-up, tear-down church. I get it. Sometimes cables might come loose. And to issue grace back. We gave you an extra 5 minutes today when you came in, so that those that thought you were late, you were on time. You're like, woo, celebrate the day. I made it to church on time. It's okay. We would be late too. We have 7 children. We just get here at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and then it gives us a lot of time. We have like 4 hours before to be late, and so it's just, we have a big buffer. So if you start at 6 and you get here by 10, then you're still on time. So just a strategy that we use. But a lot of grace given today. And we understand grace in compartmentalization in our lives. We understand grace where grace has been given to us. Therefore, when someone else struggles in an area that we've already received grace, it's easy for us to give them grace typically. Now, sometimes there's a group of us that we don't have any grace for anybody. It doesn't matter if we've been given grace. We turn around and we were late, and then all of a sudden we yell at somebody else for being late instead of going, oh yeah, I've been late before. I'll give you some grace. And then the question is, especially when you work in an environment of a business and leadership and those things, the question is, well, how many times can they be late before I fire them? Welcome to the tension of living in the upside down. That's between you and Jesus. And I really pray that Jesus' grace for me, when I don't show up for what I'm supposed to show up in my relationship with Jesus, that his grace never runs out. And there lies living in the upside down. It's like, but when, where? Right. I can't find anywhere where Jesus says my grace is not sufficient. I can only find where Jesus says my grace is sufficient. And I often tell my kids, like, man, Jesus has grace, but I do too, but it just has a limit to it. And it just ran out. And so go to the bathroom. That's where we do all our discipline in the house. It makes potty training really difficult because that's no one wants to go to the bathroom in our house because they're like, only bad things happen there. I get disciplined. Things take away from me. But that's just where we decide to send our kids when they're in trouble, go to the bathroom, because it allows us as parents to have a moment of, okay, settle our emotions before we come in there. So we're parenting because we want to teach our children, not parenting out of anger. And we don't always get this right, but it allows us, it's more for us than it might be for the safety of our children to go to the bathroom at times. So there's a gap between that and the discipline. But we send them there, and then we come in and we issue what we need to issue as a discipline. And my kids, we try to teach Jesus' grace. And I always manage that tension, like, okay, do I need to give my kids grace here? Or do I need to teach them a concept about who Jesus is and what Jesus wants them to learn in their life? Or is this a safety thing and this isn't something I can just give grace to? Like, there are sometimes, there's no bathroom options. Like when my children are very young and they run into the street, there's no like, oh, I got it, hey, go to the bathroom. No, it's like, no, I need you to understand what you just did is not okay, because that is a safety problem. They need to understand to run in the street is not okay. And so there is those moments where you got to go, can I issue grace here? Do I not need to issue grace? Here's the beautiful thing about Jesus. He has grace, and his grace is sufficient. And those are not my words. Jesus says those words recorded by the authors of the gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They record Jesus' words, and he says, my grace is sufficient. And we as humans don't even understand. We're like, what is that? I have my past. My past. I drag my past with me, and it's too messy. There's no way God can forgive me what I have done, said, thought, all of these things. I can't even forgive myself. And that, I hope, changes today. Because if you're dragging around your past with you, it will keep you from unlocking your God-given greatness, because it'll keep you to the ground. If we had a helium balloon in here today and I tied it to this pot here, the pot is keeping it grounded. But if I cut it loose, the thing that's holding it on the ground, it would go to the sky. It would reach its potential. Oftentimes in our lives, we can't reach the full potential that's in our lives that God put in us because we drag around our past. And Jesus goes, hold on, what was the point of me dying on a cross and being your Lord and Savior and Messiah if you won't forgive yourself? Because if we understand what we've been forgiven of, then we will turn around and give the same grace to everyone else in the world. And we will say, I will issue grace to you. Grace is a tough deal. Growing up, these are the things that I'm not talking about. So I'm going to illustrate it with a story in my life that is not what I'm talking about. Growing up, we lived out in the middle of nowhere. Closest neighbor was a horse barn. I would go over to the horse barn. I'd work there. I would go in the middle of the woods, and there would be horses, because when they were done using the horses, they'd turn them loose in the backyard. My best friend, besides my dog Rocky, which my wife hated, were horses, and they were just running around the backyard. I'm like the little Mowgli, right? Just running around barefoot, chasing turkeys and horses through the woods. True story. My mom is here today to verify all stories today, okay? There will be no fabrications of stories because my mom is here, and my two sisters, they can verify these stories, and they will throw me under the bus. But next week's series, My Big Fat Mouth, they won't do that because they know that will be an illustration for next week. Anyways, we grew up in the middle of nowhere, and we had a sledding hill. It was a great hill. It was so awesome. I would go out like this time of year, and I would put ramps out there so when the snow falls, I could snowboard down the hill and attempt some kind of a trick that I saw on TV. And the best kind of snowfalls where it would snow and then warm up and sleet would fall on the snow. So it was hard, and you could just go so fast. And the best sled for this type of snow and ice and sleet was the toboggan. And if you're in Minnesota, you know what a toboggan is, because you don't call it a thing you wear on your head. There are places in this United States that call the stocking cap a toboggan. I was totally confused when we worked in Ohio for a season in our lives. They go, oh man, nice toboggan. And I'm looking around for a sled, a wooden sled that curls in the front. And I'm looking around, they're like, no, it's on your head. And I'm like, what? I'm like, the stocking cap? Yeah, that's a toboggan. I'm not talking about what you wear on your head. I'm talking about a sled that's made of wood, and they just curve it in the front, and it's like spectacular. We're going to try to get one here, but they're so expensive. People are like, no, these are vintage sleds. We sell these for premium. I'm like, people just have to imagine in their mind a toboggan. we had a couple of them. My mom had her good friend Teresa Eddy over, and my mom and her friends were sledding. It was an all-skate day. Everybody in the family was out doing this, and I'm a daredevil guy. My family consists of three sisters and me, and I was the guy that attempted everything, right? I was the guy who was like, yeah, let's just have fun. And then everybody was just like, well, let's go to see how deep that water is before we say it's fun. And I'm like, no, we'll figure it out when we hit the water. It'll be wonderful. And they're like, no, I think we're going to go measure that. And then I'm on my way in and they're on their way down to measure it, and I get there before them. I was like, it's all right, the water's fine, come on in. And they're like going back up to jump in now. That was me. And so this afternoon, my mom and Teresa Eddy, they were going to go down on their toboggans first, and they took off, and my mom looks back. It's like burned into my mind. She looks back and goes, Scott, look in my eyes. I want you to know you are to stay put until we get down to the bottom of the hill. Now tell me, what did I just tell you? I'm like, what, can you just say that again, Mom? Like Epic, we call Epic our surfer dude. He's my second boy, and like that dude, he just sits there and you go, hey, Epic. He's like, what's up? And he's like, you tell him some kind of an instruction to do something. Hey, will you take out Rennie, one of our dogs? Will you take her out? And he looks at you, cocks his head, kind of like puppies do, you know, like that cute puppy face, like they cock their head, and you're like, that's so cute. Except for when Epic does it, you're like, this dude is not tracking with me. And he's like, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, bro, just come on, man, just dial in with me. And then I'm like telling this story. I'm like, Epic is me, and now I have to have grace for that guy. Oh, no. And so I'm like, what? Can you say that again, Mom? And she's like, don't go down the hill until we are done. I repeated, don't go down the hill until you're done. And then she takes off and they're going, and I was like, did she say done or son, come after me? I was so confused. I was like, I think she said, come after me, son. And so I was like, she gets like down like about 20 feet from me. I hop on the other toboggan, and I'm that guy that like, it's not fast enough with ice. I grab the wooden toboggan and I'm like, let's go. And I jump and I get on it and just take off, right? And I'm flying. My hair was slightly wet that day. It freezes like a rudder. And when I would turn, it would turn the toboggan. It was magical moments. And I am flying. I'm picking up speed. I am moving towards my mom and her friend at a rapid speed. And in my mind, I was like, I don't think she said, come after me, son. I think she said, wait till I'm done. And then now it's like too late. Motion is going. The rudder is directing us. They get off their sleds. They're laughing a little bit. And all of a sudden, time slows down where I could hear the wind go, ah. And I can see my mom and Teresa Eddy like laughing, just having a good belly laugh, and I'm headed towards them. And in my mind, I'm like, you're not going to laugh much longer. I'm going to decapitate you. And I'm trying to yell at them, but the air, because I'm moving so fast, my mouth fills up with air. My lips are back here clapping around going, get out of the way, get out of the way. And all of a sudden, Teresa Eddy pops her head up because somebody's saying, get out of the way. It's funny when someone says, get out of the way, you have to look at what direction. Don't get out of the way. It's like, get out of the way, then look. But it's human nature. We got to look at what's coming and then get out of the way. So she pops her head up over this little hill. I'm flying down. She pops her head up. I'm like, Teresa Eddy, duck. She ducks. I just skim over her back with the toboggan. It's like, poof. It got a little bit more air. The little guy in me was like, that was awesome. Let's do it again. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Mom, did you see how close I came to taking her head off? She goes, go to your bedroom. You're done sledding for the rest of the season. And all of a sudden, I'm dragging my sled. Poor little me going, oh, I thought she said, come after me, son. And I'm just dragging it, just sad day. That was my last sled of the year. And at that moment, I totally regretted going down the hill. I regretted jumping and making the toboggan go faster. I just regretted all of that. But today I tell the story, hey, it's really funny. My mom laughs at it. She's remembering the story. I can remember what everyone was wearing. It just burned into my mind because I got in trouble. But I'm not carrying that into the past or the future. That's part of my past, but I don't bring it in today. I don't feel guilty by that. Again, no one was hurt, but there are things in real life stuff for you that you're embarrassed about. Stuff that you said that you've not asked, you've not apologized, or you did stuff like you would be embarrassed if we had a video camera and we posted it up here. You're the 16-year-old you. I mean, aren't we watching the political system where people are going back to when they were like 12 years old and they say, oh, you did this at 12, 15, 16, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done that or didn't do it. I'm not, but my point is we are in a culture that issues zero grace for our past. We actually use our past or their past against them to say they're not qualified and not good. Is that what Jesus does to us? Does Jesus look at your past and measure it against you? Think about what we do with history. We take present day circumstances and what we've learned about the body and we've learned about just culture in general, and we go and judge the past based on the present standard. Isn't that wrong? Now, why the age you are now, you have learned so much more. You are wiser from experiences. Now, why do you use present day life for you to judge your past and make you feel guilty? I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have graduated college, or I wish I would have gone to college. I wish I wouldn't have dropped out. I understand we carry things we regret, but today it's got to stop. Those things, those regrets, those embarrassing moments are what are weighting you down from really unlocking what God has for you. Jesus said, I came to give you life, not to take life from you. Jesus wants to give you things. He wants to give you a bright and great future. He wants you to let go of your past. He wants you to let go of it so much so that you can talk about what you were like when you were 16 without being embarrassed, because you know you have been forgiven. When we know we're absolutely forgiven of something and we cannot be called guilty, we'll share it. See, the way we figure out how much grace we've got a hold of, when we realize that what we do is then we go, oh, Jesus has forgiven me of that. I'm not condemned by that anymore. I can't be held guilty of. I can now teach other people from what I've experienced to save them from having the exact same experiences. When you turn like 40 years old, we need to turn back around and start pointing the generation behind us as we continue to unlock our God-given greatness. We got to turn around and pour into other people so that we might be able to help them not make the same mistakes we do. And those that are younger than 40, you've got to be able to listen and be teachable and go, okay, they've been there, done that. They're not trying to tell you you're an idiot by any stretch of the imagination. What we're trying to do is prevent you from making the same mistake and having to carry this baggage with you of regret that just weighs you down. Think about the relationship regrets. You have relationships that you thought were just isolated moments. Unwise people think that every event is just an isolated moment, that they don't connect. Wise people understand that the things that we are doing presently, the decisions we make today, are a direct link to the future that we will have. They're not separated. If I came up to one of you and just socked you in the face, and I'm sorry, you're not going to go, oh yeah, that's cool. That's good. We're the same status quo level on our friendship. That's good. Nope, I think things will change. Abruptly. You might go, I can forgive you, but I don't think you're going to come back around here. I think you might leave and go, yeah, Unlock Church, that's where the pastor punches you in the face. That doesn't work out very well. It's not isolated things. Wise people understand that the past or the present that becomes the past is linked together. And Jesus steps in it. If we will take a hold of Jesus and we say, Jesus, I need you to be my Messiah. I need you to save me from my past. Please forgive me. And then you got to forgive yourself. And then you got to be able to turn around and prevent those that will come behind you from making the same mistakes you did by letting them know, I am a messy person and I carry a baggage that is not a weight any longer, but it's lessons learned. Because what good is the experiences that you have learned wrong things from if you won't teach those behind you? But we have to be able to handle the mess. We got to be able to deal with the past. And so I want to hope today, use a couple verses here as we hopefully inspire you to manage your past so that you can go into your future. And there was a story in the Old Testament. If you're brand new to being a follower of Jesus, the Bible is broken up into two parts: the Old Testament, New Testament. Old Testament also is the Jewish scriptures. That the Jewish scriptures, which we call as followers of Jesus Christians, we call that the Old Testament. That is the foretelling of Jesus' birth. How God's got a rescue plan, how God has got grace that's coming, all of these things. It's so awesome to read books like 1st and 2nd Kings and Isaiah and Ezekiel, because all of a sudden you learn God's character. You learn how he has plans for us. You learn a lot of things about God. You learn about how God had a plan to save us from our past. It should be inspiring to you when you read the Old Testament. It should be encouraging to you to keep running the race set out before you. It should teach you sometimes on what to do with your past. Like this story, man, when I read this story the other day, it was like it jumped off and I was like, whoa, that's tremendous. If you have dreams and aspirations, you feel a tap in your life, Jesus saying, I want you to go start this business. I need you to go to this foreign land, and that foreign land might be St. Paul. It might be it could be just another suburb. But Jesus is calling you and you're terrified. This story will help you understand how to move in the right direction and let go of your past. 1 Kings chapter 19 is where this story is. And the story is of Elijah. Now there's going to be two names that are very similar in this story of Elisha and Elijah. Okay, so Elijah went to find Elisha. This is how the story starts. I think it's up on the screens. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 19. So Elijah went and found Elisha. The Ja and okay? Two different guys. One's old and one's young. One's about to die and one's about to start living. So Elijah went and found Elisha. His name means, Elisha means God is salvation, which I thought was so Elisha means my God is salvation. He was plowing the field. Now we read a lot of things like, okay, great. Why does it matter if he's plowing a field? Because typically in those days, you didn't just plow a field by yourself. You got a group of people together and you started plowing together because many hands make light work. That's why we just keep having so many children, is because many hands make light work at some point, right? Because right now, that's not true. There's a lot of work, a lot of little mouths, a lot of little hands. Maybe when they're 16, anyone? Okay, science says we're in trouble. So here they're in the field plowing, and they don't plow by themselves. The story is that he's plowing with 12 people. 12 people have their ox and they're plowing, and what they would do is that one person would take their ox and their plow and they go down the line. Next person follows the same line. So 12 times you're plowing just a piece of land, and then you move over and you do the same thing so that you're being as efficient as possible. And so we pick up the story where there were 12 teams of oxen in the field, and Elisha was plowing with the 12th team. So he's the last one. When Elijah went over to him and threw his cloak across his shoulders, and then he walked away. Okay, it would be like me coming up to one of you today, taking my hoodie off, just walking up to you and throwing my hoodie on you and walking away. You'd be like, that is the weirdest thing. Some of you are like, I don't want a cow print hoodie, okay, so keep it. And some of you are like, I want a cow print hoodie, and you can have it. It's just ask me. You're going, but I don't get it. Why would that? Makes no sense. But in this moment, it's a game changer for Elisha, because Elijah was a prophet. He was the voice of God. God talked and spoke through Elijah to his people, the Israelites. And he was getting old, many, many years have gone, and he's about to pass away. He takes his coat and puts it on Elisha, symboling the presence of God that was on me is now on you. You are known as being a farmer and a plower, but God is about to do something new. God's tapping Elisha on the shoulder saying, get ready, I'm about to do something new. Your past is going to be in the past, and you have a new future. But here, you got to watch the story here because it's tremendous, because it wasn't like all of a sudden angels sang and everything just stopped. There was a decision for Elisha to make. Elijah left the ox standing there, ran after Elijah, and said to him, first, let me go kiss my father and mother goodbye, and then I will go with you. Elijah replied, go back, but think about what I have done. Don't just jump. Think about what just happened. Think about what God is asking you to do. Make sure you're all in and you're not going to just try. You know, a lot of times in life that we fail in things is because we got one foot in the new and one foot in the old. Our future, okay, I'm going to dabble, but I'm going to keep what I used to do ready to go. We in Western culture are great at having plan A and plan B. If plan A doesn't work out, I'm going to go to plan B. Plan B is like, I'll just go back to my old job. I'll go back somewhere. It's like this. As the pastor of Unlocked Church, we left the 25th largest church in the United States, potential church in Florida, to move here to do this. And we get calls occasionally asking for us to go be pastors somewhere else. And I've never gone, oh, wow, that's tremendous. San Diego? Yeah, I've been waiting for this call. I immediately say no. There's no nothing for me. Even if they offer more money, there's no draw to it because I have said I have burned plan B. This is the only plan right now. Unlock church, changing the Twin Cities, partnering with people to unlock their God-given greatness. There is no temptation to take another job anywhere because there's no plan B. This is it. We moved here. We bought a house. We're going to die here because that's where we're going to be. There is no plan B. But it's because I read a story like this where Elijah comes, puts a coat on Elisha, and he's got to make a choice. Do I leave what is safe and comfortable, and I know so well, to go into the unknown where the waters might be uncharted and choppy and dangerous? I have no idea what my future holds. I just know God is calling me to leave the plow behind. And Elijah says, think about it before you do this. Don't just act. And the story goes, so Elijah returned to his ox, and he slaughtered them. And he used the wood from the plow to build a fire and roasted their flesh. He passed around the meat to the townspeople, and they ate it. Then he went with Elijah as his assistant. You're like, okay, that's kind of odd. The dude just went, chopped up his ox in his cart, burned it, and then this is a symbol of him letting go of the past. There's no plan B here. If this doesn't work out with what God's calling me to do with Elijah, I'm just going to come back and I'm going to plow this field and I'll just be a farmer again. I'll get back into the manual labor stuff. So God, I got you. You're calling me there, but I need a plan B. I need an exit plan in case, God, you aren't actually God and you don't know what you're actually asking me to do. See, when I talked about Jesus speaking to you, you know what Jesus is saying to you. You're just afraid to let go of whatever he's telling you to let go of. It could be an addiction. It could be a job. It could be a relationship that's not healthy for you. It could be a laptop computer, but Jesus is speaking to you and you keep holding on to it. And he's like, just burn it already. Let go of the past. Don't be defined by who you were. Jesus knows who you are and knows who you should be, and he loves you just the same. Problem is, you know who you were 20 years ago or 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and you judge yourself by who you were 5 years ago. That's not you anymore. If you're a follower of Jesus and you trust him, you are a son of God and a daughter of God. Start living like that. Live with purpose. Don't hold yourself down by your past. Forgive yourself. Burn your past already. And live free. Jesus says, who I set free is free indeed. He sets us free from our past. When we ask for forgiveness, Jesus, forgive me of what I have said to people. Forgive me of the thoughts I've had. Forgive me for going into that environment, that building, and doing what I did in that building. Forgive me for smoking that, drinking that, getting too drunk. Forgive me. I am a messy person. You know what the thing about Jesus is? He goes, awesome. Been waiting for you to do that. That's why I died on the cross and shed my blood so I could say, yes, here's my grace. Grace is undeserved, unearned. And Jesus died on the cross with all of our messes in mind, myself included. And I'm so grateful for that. I am chasing Jesus with everything I got in me. And I want to inspire you and encourage you to do the same thing. But we say, I'm done with my past, I'm going to burn it. And then what we do is we'll pick it back up, but go, Jesus, I really was a jerk to those people. And then go apologize. And when you mess up again, apologize again and ask forgiveness. This is not about perfection, and you'll never do it again, and you won't screw up again, and you won't have regrets. We will all have those things, but what do we do with those things? We've got to let go of the past. And the present now is your past. What happened this morning? An argument with your spouse getting here, a frustration with your kids, and you go, I'm a horrible parent because I just keep getting frustrated with your kids. You know what? It's okay to get frustrated with your kids because when you start noticing you're frustrated with them, you know what you got to work on. As a runner, I love to run marathons and Ironman, and where I realize I'm weak, I love to recognize my weakness because now I know where to focus my attention. When Jesus reveals to me the things I'm weak in my life, I now know where to focus my attention. I know I got to work on studying the Bible. I need to be more patient. I need to be slow to anger. I need to speak better. Whatever Jesus is saying, he's just bringing to your attention what you got to work on, and you'll be better for it. In turn, you will be better for it because you'll make other people's lives better. And I think one of the best illustrations that Jesus has for all of us is found in the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, where they record Jesus' life and what he said and did. And there was a man named Peter that was one of Jesus' disciples. One of the three that really Jesus did life with. Peter, you can find these stories. I'll give you the references so you can go and read it yourself and you can go, oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay, so we have Peter, where we pick up in the story was John chapter 18, verse 7. Author John records these words. I'll read this first one here in a second. But you have Peter invited to be one of his disciples. And right before Jesus gets arrested, Peter's told that you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter's like, I will never do that. My goodness, no way, not a chance. I love you too much. I've seen what you've done, Jesus. I've seen you heal the sick, raise the dead. I saw you walk on water. I walked on water with you. I would never deny you. I would go to the cross with you. Like moments later, Jesus is arrested. Peter cuts the ear off a soldier, and this chaos ensues. You should read your Bible. It's tremendous, seriously. At small groups, we did a 30-day challenge, reading one of the Gospels every day for 30 days straight. So pick your gospel. You can start today. Some of you are like, oh, I forgot. Great. It's called Grace. Start today. Pick it up. Read it could be a verse a day. Pick Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read the Gospels about Jesus and do what he did. Okay, just apply for 30 days straight. And then after that, you can decide if you want to continue to do it. You should read your Bible. It will change your life forever. So John records the first time Peter denies Jesus. In chapter 18, verse 17, the woman asked Peter, are you not one of those man's disciples as Jesus is going in to be beaten? Aren't you one of them? That guy right there that we're sentencing to death? He goes, no, he said, I am not one of them. A couple things happen as you read through the Gospels. In John chapter 18, verse 25 now, he's standing on the outside kind of watching, warming himself up by a fire. And again, aren't you one of his disciples? Aren't you one of the guys that walked around with him? He denies it, saying, no, I am not. But one of the household slaves of the high priest, relative of the man relieved of the man whose ear Peter cut off, and he was asked, didn't I see you out there in the olive grove with Jesus? Again, Peter denied it, and immediately a rooster crowed. And the important part about the rooster crowing was Jesus said, by the time the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. He's like, no way, I couldn't. Rooster crows, what happens? Guilt enters in, and then he watches Jesus get crucified and buried in the tomb. And all of a sudden, gripped with his past, I can't believe I said I would never, and then I did it not once, but 3 times in a row, this guilt. I can't even apologize to him. He's dead. I am filled with guilt. What am I going to do? His present just became his past, and now he has to do something with it. Our culture is great at numbing our past. We get intoxicated. We get addicted to pills. We watch things we shouldn't watch to medicate ourselves from dealing with the reality of our past. And Jesus says, I've stepped into your mess to relieve you of your past. Author John records, after Jesus' death, put it into the tomb. We know it when we read the story that Jesus is risen. But at this point, when we read the story, Peter and this crew doesn't know. So John chapter 20, early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter, the guy that denied him 3 times, and the other disciples, the one whom Jesus loved. That's John, the author, referring to himself not in a name. This is where I tell you he would just rub me wrong because he didn't say John, or I was with him. He said the one Jesus loves. That's the thing that grinds me about John. He's like, hey, I'm the one he really loved. He didn't like Peter very much. He loved me. Come on, right? That would grind you. Just be honest. Some of you are like looking at me like, can I say that? Yeah, you can. I'm going to meet John one day, and I'm going to go, why'd you write it like that? Humility, man. Okay. Jesus hadn't spoke to him on it. I know. Okay, so one Jesus loved. John was with him. She said, they have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and they don't know where they put it. Peter and the other disciples started out to the tomb. Now pay attention. How do I know that Peter's gripped with regret of what he did? It's right here. This next part, they were both running, but the other disciples outran Peter. Because Peter's about to face guilt all over again. He's slowing down. Man, I don't really want to see him. I just let him down. I'm no good. And we do that with people all the time. I can't talk to that person because I'm guilty. I can't point him to Jesus because I'm a messy person. And here's Peter slowing down, going, I don't really want to see the tomb. I have no right anymore. And he backs up, full of guilt. He stopped and looked in. So he outran Peter and reached the tomb first. So the other disciples reached it first. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon arrived and went inside, and he also noticed the linen wrappings. So he finally shows up, goes in. Okay, Luke chapter 24, this is where Jesus reveals himself. Check this out. There they found the 11 disciples and the others who were gathered with them, who said, the Lord has really risen. He appeared to Peter. That is a big deal. Jesus knew that Peter was guilty, felt guilt, didn't know what to do. What does Jesus do? He reveals himself to Peter. And I got to imagine, it's not in there, but my mind goes, Jesus shows up to him, gives him a big old hug and says, man, I love you still. And I died on the cross for you. Even though I knew you would say those things, I still did it. He knew you were going to do those things in your past, and he still died on the cross for you, for that moment. I love what Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, a letter to a church in Corinth. Chapter, I pass on to you what was most important, what has also been passed to me. He's talking about Jesus. I pass on to you. Christ died for our sins, just as the scriptures says here. He's referring to the Jewish scriptures. He's saying the scriptures of Isaiah that talks about Jesus coming. He's quoting from that. He says that. And he goes, he was buried and he was raised from the dead on the third day, just as the Jewish scriptures had said. And he was seen by Peter and then by the 12. Peter saw Jesus first out of everybody, of the 12 disciples. That's called grace. Because in human nature, the person that offends me, they're the last one I'm going to give information to. They're the last one I'm going to talk to. But Jesus says in the upside down, the people that offend you the most are the ones you go to first. And that's what grace looks like. Now, here's what we want. We're going to wrap up. The band's going to come up. In front or underneath your chair is a piece of paper and a pen. Okay? If you'll grab that piece of paper, blank paper, and a pen. Everyone should have one of those. You're going to grab that, and here's what we're going to do. And if you're brand new, we don't do this all the time, but today I just felt like this was appropriate. We all have a past. We all have regrets. We walked in here ashamed, we're embarrassed by. It's time to let that go. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring, the band's going to sing here in a second. We have a couple baskets that we're going to bring up, and we're going to put them up here on the stage. And after you write down the things you want to let go of, burn your past, we're going to just have you bring them up, put them in a basket. We're going to throw them in this pot. I'm going to use this lighter here, and we're going to burn your past today. As a symbol of you're not going to live in the past anymore. You're going to do what Elisha did. Jesus tapped you. You're going to deal with your past, and you're going to let it go. And when the enemy says, hey, remember who you once were? You say to the enemy, remember who I am now? I am a child of God. I'm going to live like a child of God. And so we invite you in today to start writing. Even if you need to use both sides, please do business with Jesus over the next few moments. You were brought here for this moment today. Jesus doesn't want you to carry your past anymore. He wants you to teach people from your past.